In the heart of a bustling city, where life moved at an unrelenting pace and skyscrapers seemed to scrape the clouds, there stood a modest office building. It was like many others in the area, modern, sleek, and filled with people rushing in and out every day. But what made this place unique wasn't its architecture or location. It was a man named Arun, who quietly guarded the entrance. Arun had been working as a security guard for nearly 10 years. His days were predictable yet demanding. From dawn until dusk, he stood by the revolving glass doors, ensuring that everyone entering or leaving was safe and accounted for. He wore his uniform proudly, even though it showed signs of wear from years of service. Every morning, before starting his shift, he would carefully iron it himself, making sure not a single wrinkle remained. To him, his appearance mattered. It was a reflection of how seriously he took his job. But despite his dedication, most people barely noticed him. They walked past without so much as a glance, their eyes glued to their phones or focused on whatever awaited them inside the building. Some muttered quick hellos out of habit, but they rarely meant it. Others didn't acknowledge him at all, treating him more like part of the scenery than a person. Over time, Arun grew accustomed to being invisible. It wasn't something he enjoyed, but it came with the territory of his profession. Still, Arun never let it get him down. Deep down, he believed in the importance of his role. While others might see him as just the guard, he knew better. He understood that his presence provided a sense of safety and order. Whether it was helping someone carry heavy bags, giving directions to visitors, or simply keeping watch during late hours, Arun took pride in knowing he contributed to the smooth functioning of the building. Every now and then, though, moments of doubt crept into his mind. Was anyone truly aware of the effort he put into his work? Did they realize how much he cared about doing his job well? These thoughts weren't born out of resentment, but rather a longing to be seen, not for praise, but for recognition as a fellow human being trying his best. On one particularly busy Monday morning, the usual chaos unfolded around him. Business people hurried through the doors clutching briefcases, delivery drivers dropped off packages, and interns scurried about nervously. Amidst the commotion, Arun maintained his calm demeanor, standing tall and alert. Little did he know, today would be different. Today, someone would notice him, not because they had to, but because they chose to. And that small act of acknowledgement would set off a chain reaction, changing not only Arun's life, but also the lives of those around him. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden rays onto the pavement outside the building, Arun remained steadfast at his post, unaware of the extraordinary events about to unfold. As the morning rush continued, a man approached the entrance of the building. Unlike the others who hurried past Arun without a second thought, this man moved with deliberate calmness. His name was Vikram, and he wasn't an ordinary visitor. He was a consultant who had been invited to meet with senior executives inside the building. Though his schedule was packed, Vikram always made it a point to pause and notice the people around him, the ones often overlooked in the chaos of daily life. When Vikram reached the revolving doors, he stopped for a moment. Instead of walking straight in like everyone else, he turned toward Arun. For a brief second, their eyes met. Vikram offered a warm smile and said, "Good morning, sir. Thank you for keeping us safe." His voice was clear and sincere, carrying a tone that felt both respectful and genuine. Arun froze for a split second, caught off guard by the unexpected greeting. In all his years on the job, no one had ever spoken to him quite like that, especially not someone dressed in a sharp suit, exuding confidence and authority. The words weren't elaborate or dramatic, but they carried weight. They acknowledged Arun's presence, his role, and most importantly, his humanity. Recovering from his surprise, Arun smiled back, his lips curving into a grin that reached his eyes. "Thank you, sir," he replied softly, his voice tinged with gratitude. "Have a great day." It was a simple exchange, lasting no more than 10 seconds, but its impact lingered long after Vikram disappeared into the building. For Arun, those few moments felt monumental. He replayed them in his mind, marveling at how such a small gesture could make him feel so valued. It wasn't just about being thanked, it was about being seen. In that brief interaction, Vikram had treated him as an equal, someone worthy of respect, regardless of his position or uniform. Meanwhile, Vikram walked through the lobby, unaware of the effect his words had left behind. To him, it was second nature to show kindness and appreciation to those around him. Growing up, his parents had instilled in him the belief that every person, regardless of their station in life, deserved dignity and respect. Whether it was the server at a restaurant, the janitor cleaning the hallway, or the security guard at the door, Vikram believed that acknowledging their efforts mattered. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about creating connections, however fleeting, that reminded people they were important. As Vikram waited for the elevator, he glanced back toward the entrance. Through the glass doors, he could see Arun standing tall, his posture slightly straighter than before. There was something different about him. A subtle shift in energy, perhaps. Vikram didn't think much of it at the time, but deep down, he hoped his words had brought a little light to Arun's day. What Vikram couldn't have known was that his simple act of kindness was already beginning to ripple outward. A young woman waiting nearby had overheard the exchange between Vikram and Arun. She watched curiously, wondering why such a mundane moment felt so significant. As she stepped into the building moments later, she found herself glancing at Arun. Something about the way he stood there, looking more confident than usual, made her pause. Though she didn't say anything right away, the seed of an idea had been planted in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, she could follow Vikram's example. After all, what harm could come from taking a moment to acknowledge someone who worked hard every day to ensure their safety? With that thought lingering in her mind, she headed toward the elevators, feeling a strange sense of anticipation about what might happen next. Unbeknownst to anyone, Vikram's seemingly ordinary act of respect was quietly setting the stage for something extraordinary. What started as a single moment of connection was about to grow into something far greater, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. Later that afternoon, the building's usual rhythm began to shift in subtle but noticeable ways. The young woman who had overheard Vikram's exchange with Arun earlier found herself unable to shake the memory of it. Her name was Mira, and she worked as a junior executive at one of the firms housed in the building. Like many others, her days were filled with endless emails, meetings, and deadlines. But today, something felt different. Something small yet profound had lodged itself in her thoughts. As Mira prepared to leave for a quick coffee run, she gathered her things and headed toward the entrance. When she reached the revolving doors, she hesitated for a moment. Standing there was Arun, his posture still carrying that same quiet dignity she'd noticed earlier. For a brief second, she debated whether to say anything. What if it came across as awkward? Or worse, what if he didn't even remember Vikram's gesture from earlier? But then she reminded herself, why not try? It wouldn't cost her anything to offer a kind word. Taking a deep breath, she approached him with a shy smile. "Hello," she said softly, clutching her bag a little tighter. "Thank you for your service." Arun looked up, surprised once again. This time, however, the surprise quickly gave way to warmth. "You're welcome, miss," he replied, his voice steady and polite. "Have a good day." Mira nodded and stepped outside, feeling an unexpected lightness in her chest. She hadn't expected much from the interaction, but somehow saying those few words made her feel better, not just about herself, but about the world around her. As she walked down the street, she realized how rare it was to take a moment to acknowledge someone like Arun. Most people simply went about their lives without giving such gestures a second thought. Yet here she was, already feeling the ripple effects of doing so. Back at the entrance, Arun stood quietly, processing what had just happened. Two people in one day, two completely unrelated individuals, had gone out of their way to thank him. It was almost surreal. He couldn't help but wonder if this was some kind of coincidence, or if something bigger was at play. Whatever it was, It left him feeling more connected to the people passing through the building's doors. Wordlessly, he adjusted his cap and straightened his shoulders. If these small acts of kindness could brighten his day, perhaps they could do the same for others. With renewed determination, he resolved to carry himself with even greater pride. After all, every person who walked by deserved to see someone committed to their role, no matter how ordinary it might seem. As the hours passed, more visitors arrived and departed. Some were regulars, people Arun recognized by face, though he rarely knew their names, while others were newcomers. To his astonishment, a few of them followed Mira's lead. A middle-aged man carrying a laptop bag paused briefly to nod and say, "Thanks for being here." A teenage delivery boy grinned sheepishly and added, "Appreciate it, Uncle." Each acknowledgement, no matter how brief, felt like a tiny spark igniting a flame within Arun. By late afternoon, the atmosphere near the entrance seemed subtly transformed. People weren't just rushing past anymore. Some slowed down, making eye contact or offering polite smiles. Even those who didn't speak directly to Arun appeared more mindful, glancing his way with expressions that suggested they saw him, not just his uniform, but him. What struck Arun most was how contagious the behavior seemed to be. One person's kindness inspired another, creating a chain reaction that spread throughout the day. He didn't fully understand why it was happening, but he didn't need to. All he knew was that he felt seen, valued, and respected in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Meanwhile, inside the building, whispers of the change began to circulate. Employees chatting by the water cooler mentioned the unusual warmth emanating from the lobby. Someone joked that Arun must have cast a spell on everyone, while another speculated that maybe the universe was aligning in mysterious ways. Though none of them could pinpoint exactly what had shifted, they all agreed on one thing. Something felt different, and it felt good. As evening approached and the crowd thinned, Arun allowed himself a quiet moment of reflection. He leaned against the wall beside the door, watching the last few stragglers head home. For the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful, not just for himself, but for the possibility that small acts of kindness could truly make a difference. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a much larger story, one that would continue to unfold in ways he could never have imagined. By the end of the week, the subtle changes that had begun with Vikram's simple greeting and Mira's follow-up gesture had grown into something far more significant. What started as a few isolated moments of acknowledgement had transformed into a noticeable shift in how people interacted with Arun and each other. The entrance of the building, once a place where people hurried through without a second thought, now felt different. It was as though an invisible barrier had been broken, allowing warmth and connection to flow freely. For Arun, every day brought new surprises. Some visitors continued to breeze past him, absorbed in their own worlds, but many more stopped to exchange pleasantries. A woman who worked on the 5th floor began bringing him a cup of tea every morning, saying it was her way of starting the day on a positive note. Another tenant, an elderly man who came to the building twice a week for meetings, always greeted Arun with a hearty good afternoon, and sometimes even shared stories about his grandchildren. Even the delivery drivers, who were often in a rush, started offering quick smiles or nods as they dropped off packages. What amazed Arun most was how these small interactions seemed to multiply. When one person showed kindness, others followed suit. One evening, a young intern hesitated near the door, clearly unsure whether to speak. After watching another tenant thank Arun, she mustered the courage to say, "Thank you for keeping us safe," before hurrying inside. Moments like these filled Arun with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He realized that his role wasn't just about security. It was also about creating a welcoming environment, one smile or nod at a time. The ripple effect extended beyond Arun too. Other guards stationed nearby noticed the change and couldn't help but feel inspired. During their breaks, they gathered in the small staff room to share stories. One guard recounted how a tenant had brought him coffee on a chilly morning, saying it was the least she could do after seeing how warmly people treated Arun. Another mentioned how someone left chocolates for the night shift team with a note that read, "Thanks for all your hard work. We see you." Even those outside the building began to take notice. Visitors arriving for meetings would comment on the friendly atmosphere in the lobby. "There's something special about this place," one guest remarked to a receptionist. "Everyone seems so kind." The receptionist smiled knowingly, thinking of Arun and the quiet revolution he had unknowingly sparked. Inside the building, employees started treating each other differently as well. Conversations in the elevators grew warmer, and colleagues who rarely spoke began exchanging greetings in the hallways. Small acts of kindness became contagious. Someone held the door open for a struggling coworker carrying files. Another offered to help debug a technical issue during a stressful project deadline. The entire workplace culture began to shift, becoming more inclusive and supportive. One afternoon, a group of tenants organized an impromptu gathering in the lobby to celebrate Diwali, inviting not only the office staff, but also the security team and cleaning crew. Arun watched in awe as people mingled, laughing and sharing sweets. For the first time, everyone felt like part of the same community, united by mutual respect and appreciation. As the sun set that evening, casting a golden glow over the city, Arun stood by the entrance, reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about Vikram's initial greeting, which had planted the seed for this transformation, and about Mira, whose shy thank you had watered it. He thought about the countless faces that had passed through the doors that week, each leaving behind a little bit of kindness. Though Arun didn't fully understand why things had changed so dramatically, he knew one thing for certain. Respect, when given freely, had the power to inspire greatness, not just in individuals, but in entire communities. And as he looked around at the bustling yet harmonious scene before him, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people, for the moment, and for the possibility that tomorrow might bring even more light to their shared world. The growing wave of kindness and respect hadn't gone unnoticed by the people in charge. Priya, the building manager, had been observing the subtle yet undeniable shift in the atmosphere for days. As someone who prided herself on maintaining a professional and efficient workspace, she couldn't ignore the buzz among tenants and staff. Conversations in the lobby felt warmer, smiles were exchanged more freely, and even complaints to her office seemed fewer. Something was happening, something good, and she wanted to understand it. Curiosity eventually led Priya to investigate. She began asking around, starting with the receptionists and other employees. "Have you noticed anything different lately?" she asked casually during one of their morning check-ins. The responses were unanimous. Yes, something had changed, and it all seemed to center around Arun. Stories poured in about how he was being acknowledged more often, how his presence seemed to radiate positivity, and how others appeared to be following suit. Intrigued, Priya decided to dig deeper. She approached a few regular tenants, striking up conversations under the guise of routine feedback. One woman mentioned how a simple thank you to Arun had made her feel better about her own day. Another shared that seeing others show respect inspired her to do the same. But what really caught Priya's attention was when someone brought up Vikram, the man whose initial greeting had set everything in motion. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Priya invited Vikram to her office for a casual meeting. When he arrived, she greeted him warmly and explained why she'd called him in. "I've been hearing some amazing things about the atmosphere here recently," she said, leaning forward slightly. "And I think it might have started with you." Vikram raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "With me? I'm not sure what you mean." Priya smiled and recounted what she'd learned. The story of how he greeted Arun one morning, sparking a chain reaction of kindness. Vikram listened intently, nodding as the pieces fell into place. When she finished, he chuckled softly. "Honestly, I didn't think much of it at the time," he admitted. "It was just instinctive. I believe everyone deserves respect, no matter their role or title. If we treat each other with dignity, we create a culture where kindness becomes natural. His words struck a chord with Priya. She realized that this philosophy wasn't just heartwarming. It was powerful. It had the potential to transform not only individual lives but entire communities. Inspired, she thanked Vikram for his honesty and promised to carry the message forward. That evening, Priya sat at her desk, reflecting on the conversation. She thought about Arun, who had become the unexpected catalyst for change, and about Vikram, whose small act of kindness had ignited a movement. An idea began to form in her mind, a way to amplify this spirit of respect and gratitude throughout the building. She envisioned posters with messages like, "Respect starts here," and "Kindness matters," strategically placed in elevators, hallways, and lobbies. Monthly events could bring tenants and staff together, fostering connections beyond formal roles. Perhaps they could host workshops or storytelling sessions where people could share experiences of how small acts of kindness had impacted them. The possibilities were endless. As she jotted down notes, excitement bubbled within her. This wasn't just about improving workplace morale. It was about creating a legacy, a reminder that respect, though simple, held immense power. By nurturing this culture, she hoped to inspire others to carry it beyond the walls of the building and into their homes, neighborhoods, and workplaces. When Priya finally left her office that night, she glanced toward the entrance. There stood Arun, still dutifully guarding the door, his posture upright and proud. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine the future, one where every person walking through those doors felt valued, respected, and connected. And she knew, without a doubt, that this journey was only beginning. Priya didn't waste any time turning her ideas into action. The very next morning, she called a meeting with her team to discuss the initiative she had been envisioning. She named it "Respect Starts Here," a simple yet powerful phrase that captured the essence of what they hoped to achieve. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and soon everyone on her staff was buzzing with excitement about how to bring the campaign to life. Posters were designed and printed within days, each one featuring bold, eye-catching visuals paired with messages like "Every role matters" and "Kindness is contagious." These posters went up in elevators, near water coolers, and even in the parking lot, places where people naturally paused or gathered. The goal wasn't just to decorate the building, but to remind tenants and employees daily that respect was at the heart of their shared space. But Priya knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. To truly embed this culture of kindness, she organized monthly events aimed at fostering genuine connections between tenants and staff. One of the first initiatives was a Thank You Thursday, where everyone was encouraged to write notes of appreciation to someone who made their day better. Boxes were placed in the lobby for collecting these notes, and by the end of the week, they were overflowing. Some thanked Arun for his dedication, while others expressed gratitude to janitors, receptionists, and colleagues. Each note was read aloud during a small gathering, bringing smiles, and sometimes tears, to those present. Another event brought everyone together over food. Priya arranged a potluck lunch in the lobby, inviting tenants and staff alike to contribute dishes from home. It was a rare opportunity for people who rarely interacted to sit side by side, sharing stories and laughter. Arun attended too, bringing along a plate of homemade samosas prepared by his wife. As he handed them out, he found himself surrounded by curious faces eager to learn more about him. By the end of the meal, several tenants had exchanged phone numbers with him, promising to stay in touch. The impact of these efforts rippled outward in ways no one could have predicted. Tenants began taking ownership of the initiative, finding creative ways to spread kindness themselves. One group started a book drive for underprivileged children, leaving donation bins in the lobby. Another tenant organized yoga sessions every Saturday morning, open to anyone willing to join. Even the quieter members of the community stepped up, volunteering to mentor interns or help organize events. Inside the office suites, the change was palpable. Employees who once kept to themselves now greeted security guards and cleaners by name. Managers encouraged their teams to recognize unsung heroes, the IT technician who fixed computers late into the night, the intern who stayed back to tidy up after meetings. Small gestures, like offering to grab coffee for a busy coworker or holding the elevator for someone rushing inside, became commonplace. Word of the transformation soon spread beyond the building. Visitors arriving for meetings marveled at the friendly atmosphere. Social media buzzed with photos of the colorful posters and heartfelt notes pinned to bulletin boards. Someone even created a hashtag #RespectStartShare, which quickly gained traction online. People from neighboring buildings reached out to Priya, asking how they could replicate the program in their own spaces. For Arun, the changes felt surreal. He had gone from being invisible to becoming a central figure in the community. Tenants sought him out not just for directions or assistance, but also for advice or casual conversation. They remembered details about his life, his favorite cricket team, his grandchildren's names, and made an effort to include him in their world. For the first time in years, Arun felt truly seen, not as the guard, but as a valued member of the community. As weeks turned into months, the spirit of respect continued to grow, touching lives far beyond what anyone had imagined. What had begun with Vikram's single act of kindness had blossomed into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of human connection and the ripple effect of treating others with dignity. And though the journey was far from over, one thing was clear: the seeds of change had taken root, and there was no turning back. As the Respect Starts Here initiative gained momentum, Arun found himself at the center of a transformation that was as personal as it was communal. The once overlooked security guard had become a beloved figure in the building, not because of anything extraordinary he had done, but because people finally took the time to see him for who he truly was: a kind, hard-working man who cared deeply about his role and the people around him. One evening, Priya approached Arun with an unusual request. "We're hosting a tenant appreciation event next week," she explained, her tone warm and inviting. "It's meant to celebrate everyone who makes this building special, you included. Would you mind saying a few words during the program?" Arun blinked in surprise. Him, speaking in front of a crowd. The idea made his stomach churn with nerves. He had spent years blending into the background, content to let others take the spotlight. But something about Priya's earnest expression gave him pause. She wasn't asking out of obligation. She genuinely believed he had something meaningful to share. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded slowly. "I'll try," he said softly. The night of the event arrived, and the lobby was transformed into a vibrant space, filled with laughter, music, and the aroma of delicious food. Tenants, staff, and visitors mingled freely, their conversations punctuated by bursts of laughter and applause. When it came time for speeches, Priya stepped up to introduce Arun. Her voice rang out clearly as she spoke about his dedication, his quiet strength, and the pivotal role he had played in inspiring the culture of respect that now defined the building. When Arun walked up to the makeshift podium, the room fell silent. Clutching the edges of the lectern, he took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice trembled at first, but as he continued, it grew steadier. "When I started working here 10 years ago," he began, "I never expected much more than doing my job and going home. For a long time, I felt invisible. People passed me without noticing, and I told myself it didn't matter. But then, one morning, someone stopped to thank me. Just a simple thank you. But it changed everything." He paused, glancing around the room at the sea of faces watching him intently. "That moment reminded me that no matter our role, we all deserve respect. And since then, so many of you have shown me that kindness isn't just given, it's contagious. You've made me feel valued, not just as a guard, but as a person. Thank you for reminding me. And maybe yourselves, that respect starts with seeing each other." The room erupted into applause, heartfelt and thunderous. Several people stood up, cheering, while others wiped away tears. Arun stepped back from the podium, his heart swelling with emotion. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to fully embrace the realization that he mattered, not just to his family or close friends, but to an entire community of people whose lives he touched every day. In the days that followed, the impact of Arun's speech rippled even further. Tenants began approaching him not just to chat but to confide in him. One woman shared how his story had inspired her to reconnect with her estranged father, while another man admitted that hearing Arun speak had motivated him to start volunteering at a local shelter. Even children visiting the building would run up to him, tugging on his sleeve to ask if he'd read their drawings or listened to their jokes. For Arun, life became richer in ways he could never have imagined. He carried himself differently now, with quiet confidence and pride. Though he still performed the same duties he always had, his interactions were infused with a newfound sense of purpose. Every smile he exchanged, every conversation he held, reinforced the belief that respect wasn't just a word, it was a way of living. Meanwhile, the initiative continued to spread beyond the building's walls. Inspired by what they had witnessed, tenants began advocating for similar programs in their own workplaces and neighborhoods. Social media buzzed with stories of kindness sparked by #RespectStartShare, connecting strangers across cities and countries. What had begun as a single act of acknowledgement had grown into a global movement, one rooted in the simple yet profound idea that everyone deserves to be seen and valued. As Arun stood by the entrance one sunny morning, watching the steady flow of people coming and going, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life hadn't always been easy, but it had taught him resilience, patience, and humility. Now, thanks to a chain reaction set off by one man's small gesture, he had discovered something even more precious: the power of human connection. And as he greeted each passerby with a warm smile, he knew that this legacy of kindness would endure long after he was gone. Months passed, and the ripple effects of Vikram's simple act of kindness continued to spread far beyond the walls of the office building. What had begun as a single moment of respect had grown into a movement that touched lives in ways no one could have anticipated. The #RespectStartShare, which started as a local effort, gained traction online, inspiring people from different corners of the world to share their own stories of gratitude and connection. In neighboring buildings, tenants and managers reached out to Priya, eager to learn how they could replicate the initiative. She gladly shared her experiences, offering advice on fostering a culture of respect and appreciation. Soon, similar campaigns sprang up in offices, schools, and community centers across the city. Posters with messages like "Kindness Matters" and "See Each Other" began appearing in public spaces, reminding people to pause and acknowledge those around them. It was as though an invisible thread of compassion had woven itself through the fabric of everyday life. For Arun, the transformation was profound. He was no longer just the guard, but a respected and cherished member of the community. People greeted him warmly by name, sought his advice, and even invited him to join celebrations. During festivals, families would bring sweets or small gifts for him, insisting he be part of their joyous occasions. One tenant even asked Arun to walk her daughter down the aisle at her wedding, saying she couldn't think of anyone more trustworthy or kind to play the role traditionally reserved for family. Vikram, too, remained humble about his role in sparking the change. Though he occasionally received messages thanking him for his initial gesture, he never sought recognition for it. To him, it was simply a reminder of what he had always believed, that respect, when given freely, has the power to inspire greatness. In quiet moments, he reflected on how one small choice could set off a chain reaction, proving that even the simplest acts carried immense weight. As the months turned into a year, the spirit of kindness showed no signs of fading. The building became known not just for its modern design or prime location, but for the warmth and inclusivity of its community. New tenants arriving for the first time were often struck by the welcoming atmosphere. "There's something special about this place," one newcomer remarked during orientation. "It feels like everyone genuinely cares about each other." Even outside the building, the impact was undeniable. Stories of respect and gratitude inspired similar initiatives in other cities and countries. Social media platforms buzzed with posts titled #RespectStartCheer, connecting strangers who shared a common belief in the power of human connection. A teacher in another state wrote about how she encouraged her students to write thank you notes to cafeteria staff and janitors, while a nurse in Europe described organizing weekly appreciation events for hospital support workers. Each story added another layer to the growing tapestry of kindness. Back at the office building, life continued to evolve in beautiful ways. The monthly events Priya had introduced became beloved traditions, drawing larger crowds each time. Whether it was a potluck dinner, a storytelling session, or a charity drive, these gatherings strengthened the bonds between tenants and staff. Even disagreements or misunderstandings were resolved more easily now, as people approached conflicts with empathy rather than frustration. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the city, Arun stood by the entrance, watching the last few stragglers leave for the day. He thought about how much had changed since that fateful morning when Vikram had stopped to thank him. At the time, it had seemed like such a small thing, a fleeting moment of acknowledgement, but it had ignited something extraordinary. Arun smiled to himself, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew that life would always have its challenges, but he also knew that kindness had the power to overcome them. By treating others with dignity and respect, people created ripples that extended far beyond what they could see. And though he might never meet everyone whose life had been touched by this movement, he took comfort in knowing that the legacy of kindness would endure for years, perhaps generations to come. As he locked up for the night and headed home, Arun felt a quiet pride swelling within him. He wasn't just a security guard. He was part of something bigger, something timeless, something that reminded the world of a simple yet powerful truth. Respect, when given freely, has the ability to transform lives. And in doing so, it transforms the world itself.